On a bitter winter evening just days before New Year's, the kind of night where the cold feels personal, a 61-year-old man named Caleb Rowan sat alone in a roadside cafe on the outskirts of a quiet Montana town, his coffee untouched and long gone cold, steam replaced by silence, his weathered hands resting on the table like they had nowhere else to be, his heavy wool coat still on as if warmth was something he no longer trusted, and anyone who glanced his way might have seen only another tired, old man passing time. But those who looked closer would notice the faded military pins on his collar, the stiffness in his posture, and the unmistakable weight of a man who had survived too much and lived too long with what survival had cost him. Because Caleb had once been a firefighter, the kind who ran toward burning buildings while others ran away, until the night everything changed, the night a warehouse fire collapsed without warning, trapping his partner and best friend under falling beams while Caleb stood frozen for half a second that would haunt him forever, a half second where instinct failed and fear won, a half second that meant only one of them walked out alive, and after the funeral and the folded flag and the quiet handshakes, Caleb resigned, moved away, and learned how to exist without purpose, spending years drifting between small towns, cheap rooms, and quieter versions of himself, until that night in the cafe when the door opened with a sharp jingle, and a young woman stepped inside holding the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been more than 6, her coat thin and frayed at the edges, her eyes tired in a way sleep couldn't fix, and the boy clutched a plastic toy car, missing one wheel, pushing it along the floor with determination that made no sense given how little he had, and they took a seat near the counter, whispering to each other as if trying not to take up space in the world, and Caleb watched without meaning to, noticing how the woman counted change twice before ordering soup and bread to share, noticing how she smiled at her son while her shoulders stayed tense, like she was bracing for something bad to happen at any moment, and when the boy's soup spilled just a little, she said it was okay too quickly, the way people do when they're afraid even small mistakes might cost them more than they can afford, and when the boy turned around and looked straight at Caleb with curious eyes that didn't yet know how to be afraid of strangers, he pointed and said, "Mom, that man looks lonely." And the woman flushed with embarrassment, apologizing quickly, but Caleb surprised himself by smiling, a real one, the kind he hadn't felt in years, and saying softly, "He's not wrong," which made the boy grin like he'd won something important, and before Caleb could overthink it, he waved them over, saying no one should eat alone on a night like this, and the woman hesitated, pride and fear wrestling quietly on her face, until the boy tugged her sleeve and whispered, "Please," and she gave in, introducing herself as Mara, her son as Elliot, explaining in fragments that they were between places, that her car had broken down, that tomorrow would be better even if she didn't quite believe it yet. And as they talked, something gentle unfolded, Elliot asking Caleb endless questions about his pins, about fires, about whether heroes got scared too, and Caleb answering honestly for the first time in years, admitting, "That fear never goes away. You just learn to carry it." And Mara listened with a softness that surprised him, sharing how she'd lost her husband to illness 2 winters earlier, how life had become a series of plans that fell apart just when she needed them most, and how she kept going because Elliot needed her to. And somewhere between shared bread and quiet laughter, the cafe felt warmer, fuller, like something fragile was being stitched back together. And when the bill came, Caleb paid without asking permission, stopping Mara gently when she protested, saying that sometimes kindness wasn't charity, it was survival. And when they stepped back into the cold, snow beginning to fall in thick, slow flakes, Mara admitted they had nowhere safe to go for the night, and Caleb heard himself offering the spare room in his small rented house, not as a grand gesture, but as a simple fact, like there was no other choice worth making. And though fear flickered in Mara's eyes, exhaustion won, and she agreed, and that night passed quietly, Elliot asleep clutching his broken toy, Mara sitting awake at the kitchen table until Caleb joined her, the two of them talking about grief, about guilt, about how loneliness can feel louder than pain, and when she confessed that some nights she wasn't sure she was strong enough to keep going, Caleb didn't try to fix it. He just stayed, and that was enough. And in the weeks that followed, one night turned into several into something steadier. Caleb helping fix Mara's car with a neighbor, Mara finding work at a local library, Elliot filling the house with noise and movement and questions, and slowly, without ceremony, Caleb felt the weight inside him shift, felt the memory of that warehouse fire loosen its grip as he realized that surviving didn't mean dishonoring the past. It meant choosing the present. And one evening, as snow melted into spring, Elliot handed Caleb a crumpled drawing of 3 stick figures, holding hands under a crooked sun, saying, "This is us." And something inside Caleb broke open in a way that healed instead of hurt. And months later, when Caleb stood watching Elliot run across a park laughing, Mara beside him with her hand in his, he understood that kindness wasn't about saving someone. It was about letting yourself be changed, about choosing connection when isolation feels safer, about believing that even after loss, life can grow again in unexpected, quiet ways. And if anyone had told him years earlier that his life would begin again in a nearly empty cafe on a freezing night, because a child spoke the truth without fear and a tired woman took a risk on a stranger, he would have laughed. But standing there under a soft blue sky, he knew that sometimes the smallest moments carry the greatest mercy. And sometimes, when you think your story is over, kindness writes you a new beginning without asking permission.